Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Runs and Acceleration with your host, Ruhan and Akash. Well, the last 1 month, there's a lot been happening in the world of Formula One, so it's high time we did an episode as we head from one triple header to the start of another. There's some very big announcements, and as the season heads into its business end, um, some exciting things to talk about.
Yeah,
So, Akash, let's start with the biggest news, which is the driver transfers market, especially at Alfa Romeo and um, Mercedes.
yeah. So I'm gonna start with Mercedes because, in my opinion, I think probably the biggest news that's come out
Yeah,
of F1 last month is probably uh, I consider this to be just a moment, I think, for in history, in my opinion. So if you guys don't know, a really Williams William now former Williams driver, actually, young talented George Russell is going to get that second seat at Mercedes. Is going to be driving alongside Lewis Hamilton. If you can't tell, I'm really excited and at the same time nervous for the other teams about what's going to happen. But because of George Russell taking Valtteri Bottas' seat at Mercedes, that means that Valtteri Bottas will now be going to Alfa Romeo, which is the Ferrari Junior team, and because Valtteri Bottas comes in, he'll be driving alongside Antonio Giovinazzi. And if you guys are wondering, very sad news actually in F1, and probably another moment I would say is we lose an absolute veteran in F1.
legend. Yeah,
I would say probably the biggest one of the biggest stars of F1, just a personality
yeah,
that I don't think we're ever going to see again, and that's
true.
the legend himself, the Iceman, Kimi Räikkönen, has decided to retire at the end of this season. And I think before we move a little bit more into our thoughts about what Russell,
Hmm.
Mercedes, all that kind of combination, what it has for the what it can mean for the new changes that are coming up in 2022. I just want to kind of almost dedicate a little bit to Kimi Räikkönen. I think
Absolutely.
we we have seen the man do some insane things. I believe I could be wrong on this. I think he's fifth of all time podiums. I believe
Yes.
in Formula One history. And that's insane. That's an insane record. You're going up against Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher, Fernando Alonso, Senna, Prost, all these great drivers,
Yeah.
and you're having an absolute legend leaving the sport. And for me, I think the one thing is everything about Kimi. I think a lot of people say, okay, yes, all those memes, those kind of jokes
Yeah.
about him and everything like that, and just his demeanor. But I just more or less just I think it was his demeanor which I like. It wasn't really the memes. It was just more about what he was there to
His
do. And
approach.
the
Yeah.
one thing that he was there to do was just race. It was, to be honest, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry for the foul language, but there was no bullshit with Kimi
Yeah.
Räikkönen. There was absolutely no BS with him. It was you go out there, you drive, you perform. If you have your day out, go celebrate, do whatever you want. Don't have your day out, who cares? Whatever. We just move on to the next. We move on to the next race, the next race, the next race.
Exactly.
And that kind of attitude, in my opinion, for me, I think Formula One, given the current crop of drivers, we see kind of, young drivers who are a little bit more
Yeah.
exuberant in some way. Some drivers like Lewis Hamilton, who, are are not, they fit that norm of an F1 driver, something like that. And I think a lot of people get drawn to them. I get a lot of people get drawn to them because of their personalities. But for me,
Yeah.
Kimi Räikkönen was just his own entity and someone who
True.
we're just gonna miss entirely. Yeah.
I think, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's someone, he's been like, he's been, I think, the one guy who no one can really hate. You may not like his driving style, but then there's no one who hasn't liked his demeanor on, whether it's through memes or whether it's just the stuff he did. He didn't do it for the memes
Yep.
um, or the jokes. He genuinely did because that's what he felt, which is what made it his style.
Yep.
For
Mm-hmm.
example, he's at Monaco, the most prestigious race. His engine blows up, and he decides, you know what, I'm not going to go back and analyze what happened.
Mm-hmm.
To hell with this. And he's, I think, at that point leading the championship, coming second, something like. He's like, to hell with this. I'm just gonna go to my yacht and party. And you
Exactly.
see him in his boxers drinking champagne like 10 laps after,
Hmm.
which is something that's really weird. So I don't know, he made his own mark on the sport and he did it in his way, unapologetic. Even today, he's saying, it's a part of my life, but if I'm going to miss it, no, I'm going to move on to something else, which just shows why he was able to achieve what he was.
Yep.
And, not just all this about his demeanor, his style, he's also, by every possible person in F1, ranked as the most fair of drivers to go up against. He's the one guy you can go up against
Yep.
side by side. He'll push you to the edge, but he'll never push you over the edge.
Yep.
You won't make contact or you won't crash.
Yep.
So that is, kudos to him for giving us so many years of entertainment on and off the track. And big thank you to Iceman.
Yep. Exactly. I think you summed it up brilliantly. So moving on from now Kimi Räikkönen, I think we can now talk about the main man now, George Russell. Um, I'll give you my first thoughts and then you can let me know what you think. But I think
Sure.
this is going to be a hell of a next season. I think this is going to be so interesting.
It
Um,
is.
if you don't remember, George Russell has actually been in that, he was previously had been a reserve driver for Mercedes, but also when last season when Lewis Hamilton had unfortunately got tested positive for COVID, he had to sub in at Bahrain and
Hmm.
absolutely outdrove that car. He was brilliant. It was brilliant in that car. Mind you saying that I think that Mercedes car was also in 2020 was probably the most dominant car I think we've
Best.
seen
Yeah.
in F1 history, really. But for him to get adjusted so quickly and everything like that really took
True.
really was a big statement. Unfortunately, there was awful pit stop that you rarely ever see from Mercedes. It was
Yeah.
absolutely horrible.
Mismatched tire compounds, so he had to pit again.
Yeah,
Then there was a puncture he picked up. So
yeah.
just like,
It
yeah,
was it felt no for me it felt like very like just like this is what like like things that happen in like a kid's like go-kart race or some stuff like
yeah,
that. Like you don't get mismatched compounds like that. I would assume that people are like triple checking and quadruple checking some things like these
yeah.
things. So yeah, it's just very disappointing to see that. But for me, what I think gets really exciting is that now you have, I think the one thing was that for me, I see that Valtteri Bottas at Mercedes was dipping. It has to be said that he was dipping.
Yeah.
He wasn't up to Lewis's speed because Lewis is genuinely just bloody quick. He's too
Yeah,
fast for a lot of people.
definitely.
We always talk about that. The only person that was really able to compete with him was Nico Rosberg, but still, that took out so much out of him. And only after he won that, he won the championship, he decided to retire because he can't do this again. It's impossible to
Yeah.
do it again. Yeah. So really, I first of all have to give a hats off to Valtteri because he's obeyed team orders. He's tried his best, but
He's
yeah,
given up victories. He's given up his own, you know, a lot of his own achievements to make sure his teammate and the team got the maximum
yep,
result. So great team player. Um, well, one fin replaces another. So
yeah,
this is actually a trend that's going on. When Mika Hakkinen retired, he was replaced by Kimi
Kimi
Räikkönen.
Räikkönen, yep,
So kind of continues that tradition with the flying fins, which is great for them. I think Russell, uh, I think if you were to look at Spa, right, which was first race of this triple header, that
yep,
was kind of the icing on the cake in a race. Well, the race never happened, which we'll just cover on why that was sorry, but it was a shit show. But
yeah,
uh, the fact that he almost beat Max Verstappen, the
mhm,
championship leader, to pole position in a soaking wet Spa, one of the most dangerous tracks, which caught out his friend Lando Norris quite badly.
yep,
He goes out there and gets P2 in a Williams.
yeah. Incredible, insane in my yeah actually. Um,
And he
I
beat Lewis Hamilton.
yeah, Anna Williams again. I think we just have to hit that home. But
Yeah,
look, it's we're talking about Spa now, and we could kind of focus on that. I think one thing I kind of will finish on George also when we move to Spa is I think we have a competition at Mercedes. And I
Hmm.
think that as much as George Russell, I've seen George Russell be a really, really good team player at Williams. He's been someone that's so integral.
Definitely.
He's been the lead driver at Williams. Now, I think what he might have to just anticipate that he is going to be the second driver. He is going to be that second driver. He's not going
Yeah.
to be at the priority, but I really want him to give it. I really want him to to really just push it
True.
to the limit. I weirdly think, I know this might sound insane to you or something like that. I think this man can go for a championship next year. I truly believe
He
that.
can.
I think he really can. In this, and that'll be one of the greatest stories, I think, in F1,
I
honestly.
think definitely. Well,
So yeah,
that might be the best story in F1, but let's come to one of the most interesting but disappointing stories of Formula One, which is the shortest race ever.
yeah.
Never understood what happened in that race. Okay,
Wasn't
again,
a
great for
race. It
Russell.
wasn't a race. It was just a
No,
qualifying
it's
session. That's it. That's all
yeah.
that happened. Yeah, it wasn't a race. Yeah.
No one understood what happened, and I'm sorry, but if you were expecting bad weather later on, which is it started raining before the start of the race. I get that TV rights are sold, and it's all about how much viewership you get. But seriously, if you know the weather is going to be that bad, you can always prepone it rather than postponing it. Where the FIA also didn't know, is this a 4 hour race? Is there a 3 hour window? Are we
Yeah.
delaying it? Are we sending them out? I don't know.
Yeah. No, so like just to give a little people more context about what happened at Spa in that race. The weather was bad weather. It was really, really bad rain, and it was extremely difficult for the cars to find grip on the track. So they basically in a sense called off the race. And whatever and for like the points and everything like that, they gave the whoever essentially qualified, and they qualified for second and third, P1, P2, and P3. They had got points, but only half points because it wasn't a full race. And I think the one thing for me was number one is I look at this from two sides. One is when you look at driver safety, yes, if this race actually happened, I think this could have been pretty dangerous. I think it could have been dangerous
Yeah,
in many, many respects for driver safety. And we could see. I don't think any of us want to see anything happen. We've had such an unfortunate accident happen there at Spa just a few years ago with Antoine
yep,
Hubert. And that was not even in the rain. It was perfect conditions actually
exactly.
at that. It was really good conditions for driving. But we've seen these kinds of things happen. So I think that's one side. But I think from the second side, which you were kind of pointing out too, was you know that fans really I think were really disappointed by that. For me, I always look at F1. There are some races where I love. There's that history that comes with Monza. There's that
Yeah,
history that comes with Spa. There's some, you like to see like a nice Monaco or something like that. There's some certain tracks that really appeal to me. And not being able to see, a Spa race was very, very disappointing.
true.
I was just to be honest, as an F1 fan, I was just being I wanted to like just like
Yeah, I don't understand why we can't. When we have all the weather apps in the world,
yeah.
someone like Formula One, who are looking at it by the minute,
Mhm.
and they're spending so much on these systems, how they can't know that something like this is coming
Yeah.
and to prepare for it with an earlier race or something.
Yeah.
And more importantly, some events, yes, all events are equally important, but I think some events, like you said, just the importance of them in the context of the sport
Yeah.
are much higher. So instead of focusing on, I'm sorry, but two races at Circuit of the Americas or Austria, which end up being boring and repetitive,
Hmm.
you might want to schedule more of those races on tracks like these, which are, if something like this happens, firstly, there's a backup
Yeah.
in some way, especially when you're, trying to replace each other's races, but also just because these are actual proper racetracks.
Yeah.
Why can't we race here? Why do we have to race more on countries like the USA circuit has not been ranked as one of the best ever.
Yeah.
Um, no offense to the Saudi Arabia circuit, but it's another street circuit which is no
It's
one's
just
really
gonna be
looking forward to.
fast. I kind of seen the layout of it. I've not been like, oh wow, this is gonna be such a
Yeah,
tough. I think it's just gonna be pretty average. And I think we can kind of that thing about average kind of tracks is I think we can kind of switch it off to the next weekend that happened after that was
Zanderwood. Yeah,
the at Zandervoort in the Netherlands. Max Verstappen's home race, sea of orange essentially was there. They were
yeah.
all the fans are just supporting him. But you know what? We got a pretty. I would say we just got a. I would say we just not a very interesting race.
Yeah.
Verstappen, he got pole position and he won it, and that's that's the story. I don't know what
I
else to
think
say.
the only story was that okay, he finished 20 seconds ahead of Hamilton,
Yep.
and both of them together lapped almost everyone except the third and fourth place guys, which were their teammates, I think, or something. Or
Mhm.
actually, fourth was Gasly. Sergio Perez made a comeback, but the reason it's
Yep.
not a great thing is because he shouldn't have been in that position anyway. He's had a lot of qualifying trouble.
Yep. Yep.
Um, yeah, so I think there's not much that really happened in Zanderwood except, great home race for one of the guys. But it was quite simply tracks like those are fast, but they're just processional races. Nothing really happens.
Yep.
Um, Especially with cars which are now, they said the cars are 2 meters wide.
Yeah.
If a car is 2 meters wide, I don't think there are many tracks in the world where you can really go side by side or try to overtake each other,
Yeah.
especially on these kind of tracks which were made, in the 70s or whatever. They just don't have that kind of space.
Yeah. And I think the one thing about you're talking about cars being pretty big. I'm just trying to look at my room right now, like look at how much 2 meters is. But on that
Yeah.
point that you were brought up about how cars are being too big, I think we can kind of move on to a really unfortunate incident that happened at Monza. I think we could sort of say that let's kind of give a little bit context first. I think at Monza, we were coming into that weekend. I think a lot of people felt that this was, in my opinion, I actually found this to be a very very important race for Red Bull in a way because
Yeah.
this is where they can really show if their pace is truly there. And in essence, not. I was a little bit disappointed in the qual. I was a little bit disappointed in the qualifying,
Yeah.
but we will have to mention in the qualifying was absolutely terrible. I was extremely disappointed in the qualifying in just people just block. Essentially, what cars were just going
Third
so
year in a row.
yeah, so slow in some places, just blocking other drivers. And also, these cars are becoming so big, so you can't even navigate around them or anything like that.
Exactly.
They're just giving a tow to these other drivers, and that's it. It ruins qualifying, and it just ruins everything. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
and speaking
sorry, we're
of
going on a
no,
little
no,
bit
no,
of a
you're
rant.
right,
Yeah,
because for people who don't know, 2 years ago, Charles Leclerc got a pole on Monza, I think fastest lap at the time.
yep,
And he got it because no one could set a final lap time.
yep,
All 10 of them. Thing is, Monza, because it's a lot of straights, even if you're 3 or 4 seconds behind the car in front of you,
mm-hmm.
you will get a slipstream effect and you get those extra speed. So
Yep,
no one really wants to give that space to anyone else.
mm-hmm.
Because of that, everyone held each other back so much that
Mm-hmm.
no one could even start the lap before time ran out.
Yeah,
And we didn't have exactly that this year, but we've come way too close to having, one guy is on the limit going at 200 miles an hour, the other guy is, just at 50 miles warming up his tires. And with the closing distances at those speeds,
yep,
we're just waiting for a big accident to happen, especially in a place like Monza.
yep,
And
and
I'm sorry, but sprint qualifying is not the solution to that.
exactly. Yeah, we can cover I think like the sprint races and all of that. I think probably we'll cover that in the future episode. But
Yeah.
in essence, I just don't think it works out that well. I believe that how they distribute the points, 1 point, 2 points, 3 points. What are you kidding me? Like that's how many people get. I think there should be it should be much more, or at least a little bit better handled. But
Yeah.
no, it wasn't that fun. It wasn't very interesting to watch in all honesty. But
Nothing happened. No
yep,
one except I think Gasly lost his front wing, so he went into barriers hard.
yep,
But no one really overtook anyone. It was just same old.
Yep.
Because again, there's,
No one wants to
when you
push the
have
car.
all,
No one wants to push
yeah,
the car that much because then
because
if you
it's
put
not actually a race and you're not actually getting points.
yep. Exactly. So I think you kind of had that point before that you're waiting for an accident to happen. You're waiting for something to happen, and we got that. We got a
Yeah,
pretty bad accident. So essentially, what happened at Monza at turn one, which if you guys don't know, it's very you're coming off of very the fastest part of the track. Very you have to brake
yeah,
really hard and brake very hard, and then it's you have to go through a chicane, which is kind of like an S if you guys don't know.
yeah,
So and you had to and you're going at really slow speeds like that, but and it becomes very tight. So essentially what will happen was both Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, they're coming together in that corner. Hamilton had the lead and had the corner, in my opinion, had the corner. Verstappen tried to come inside, but unfortunately, Verstappen's car kind of almost, in a sense, rammed into Hamilton and went over the top, actually clipped Hamilton's head.
Hamilton said
Yeah, thank God for that halo that protects the drivers.
that. I agree with you because when we put out the first podcast for this season, we have a picture of them going up against each other at Imola,
Yep.
and there were these pictures that were coming every race. These two had a battle for the lead and was side by side like that, and there was, everyone's like, oh, there's so much respect between them, they're pushing each other to the limit.
Yeah.
Then happened Silverstone with the 51G impact crash for Verstappen. So
Yep.
if you look at it from that standpoint, yeah, this crash was nothing. They were going at only 70 to 80 kilometers an
Yep.
hour because it was a slow corner.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the point. The point is they're pushing each other so much that they're starting to go for gaps that don't exist. Artin
Exactly.
Senna said, if you don't go for gaps that exist, you're no longer a racing driver.
Racing drive. Yep.
But these gaps don't exist. And it kind of throws back, to more iconic images in F1. For example, talking of Senna and Prost in Japan, the
Oh
last
yeah.
corner,
Yep. Yeah.
yeah,
When they
tried to go
collided
for a
there.
pass that wasn't there, collided
Mm-hmm.
into each other, and the world championship was decided there. Then
Yep.
I think the next year again, when apparently Senna said he deliberately caused an accident between them to win the championship.
Yep.
We've had, we have had the one with Schumacher going into Villeneuve in the 90s. We've had these moments before, and
Mm-hmm.
these have all been evidences of drivers just going past that breaking point, and for some reason that has happened.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know why the thumbs up came up, but yeah.
Yeah.
So um so it's an iconic part of this season, kind of symbolizes how competitive things have gotten.
Yep.
But it's you know Verstappen's got his penalty. My view was a bit different. Both
Mm-hmm.
of them had right to the corner. It's again, I think the fault is just when you have cars that wide, even if they go into the corner and there's space, at one point with the angle, there's none.
Yeah.
So no one really clipped each other, but just because Verstappen was on that sausage curve, it, the car went up and kind of rammed into Hamilton, and
Yep.
the tire literally hit him on the back like this. The only saving grace is because of the halo, it didn't push down.
Yep.
Otherwise, it could have been a very nasty crash
Yep.
because you have to realize these tires are not your car
Mm-hmm.
tires.
And also
These are really big.
for the helmet now they
Yeah,
have that Hans and everything like that that protects them. So in that way,
yeah,
it was good. But I I think the one thing, also one thing, where I found that was, both of them are pushing it to the limit, and both of them, they just, we saw that Verstappen after this now got a 3 place grid penalty in the next
yeah.
race, um, which I think is actually a little bit harsh, actually, in my opinion. I think, but I think that they had to like there had to be some kind of penalty, some kind of consequence or something like that after. So, you know what? We'll have to see. Verstappen might be maybe really good in qualifying and may come P4, something like that. But I think definitely this season is it's I in my opinion I think it's going to be unpredictable. I really don't know what's going to
Yeah,
happen at the end. And one thing I think this is going to be really interesting is that it really could come down to the final race,
yeah,
which in many years now in F1 we've not had actually. Yeah, for some
Yeah, not since Rosberg,
yeah,
and
not since
even that was, but we have to realize that was between two teammates.
yep.
It was literally the same car.
I think don't get me wrong. I think before Rosberg, I think it was Vettel, right, at Abu
Vettel
Dhabi,
and
right?
Alonso
Yeah.
was was probably the last time we went into the final race with two teams and two drivers competing. So it's been
Yep.
almost a decade. So high
Yes.
time. I know we've not covered much, but let's end off with a good note, which is McLaren.
Mhm.
9 years wait finally ended, and who better to do it than Ricardo? Oh my God,
Yeah.
that guy came back in some form.
I think for me, Ricardo, if you guys look, Ricardo is we've said it so many times on the podcast before that he is the master at late breaking. That's his thing, and he got that. I mean, he nailed that when he was at Red Bull. His second season at Renault, he was bloody brilliant. He outdrove that car actually a
Definitely.
lot, and now I saw that old school. I saw that old school Ricardo. This makes a good, really good midfield fight also. Yeah.
And we can just hope because both teams are on an upward trend. Ferrari was a self-inflicted downward trend.
Yep.
But either way, I think we're seeing some very good progress. They have their drivers locked in for a few years. Leclerc wants to extend to 2026,
Yep.
and Lando Norris is not going anywhere. So, especially when you have battles of McLaren versus Ferrari, we've had
Mhm.
over the decades so many amazing battles.
Yep.
So, if you promise us more, and this time for actual podiums and wins again, with young drivers who are driving their teams,
Yep.
I think it's going to be really exciting to watch. And just to end off on what to look forward to, well, we have the last part of the season now coming up, a couple of triple headers and double headers.
Yep.
But more than that, looking forward to the new era of Formula One with new regulations. We're going to have Russell at Mercedes, Lando at McLaren. Gasly is heading up Alpha Tauri in his own way with the budget cap. Who knows what they can achieve?
Exactly.
And Esteban Ocon is a race winner at Alpine. Alonso's only going to be there for so much time. Ferrari has two amazing drivers.
Yep.
It's and obviously Verstappen at Red Bull.
Yep.
This looks like a good fight coming up.
Yeah. I think this season is sort of almost feels like a warm up to what's probably going to come. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Well,
Okay.
I think that's the perfect way to end this. Maybe this time you can give us the end credits.
Yeah. So just as Ruan was saying, yeah, thank you so much for everyone for tuning in. Be sure to check our next podcast out, which is going to be more. We're going to do an episode on cricket. Some big news has been coming out in the last few weeks or so. So we definitely want to cover that and keep you guys updated, and we'll share our thoughts about it. So this is Runs of Acceleration with your host Ruhan and Akash, signing off.
Bye bye.
Bye.